And here is part 6 of the Refex presentation. Dynamics GP data extracted from a stored procedure and used as the data source for a Microsoft Excel workbook, a Refex, a refreshable Excel workbook. We've got the main items down now. We modified the stored procedure in the SQL Server Management Studio, and we've been referring to the parameter, the numeric order that they're in to help us figure out what was what. We created the connection to the data in Excel, and we had to type in values, sample values for every single one of those 32 parameters. That gave us the table that you see on screen right here. We created a parameters tab that lists all of the parameters in a usable arrangement. Created a couple of collapsible regions so that once we've got a set of default values, we can just leave those alone and the user doesn't have to bother with them so much. Each one is clearly labeled. Then in the last segment, we modified the data connection so that our command text here with all those 32 parameters was pointing to an actual cell in the workbook, and each of the values in those cells would fill in for one of the parameters. That makes this thing work. Finally, we're going to do a little bit of work on this table, and I will say that this might be something that you want to use or to add in the stored procedure itself. I did not. This is an exercise for the student. I will say here, though, that the data that's returned shows any outstanding apply amounts and the amount that's being aged, and the sum of these two columns is what is combined together in the aging columns that we're going to see in the pivot table. So in the pivot table, you want to point to a single column that contains the value that you're going to add up. But here we've got two columns. So what I'm going to do is make a column at the end of this deal here, and I'm going to call it, I don't know, total aging amount. Doesn't matter what I call it. And this is going to equal the apply amount plus the aging amount. So here's our formula right up here, and it's referring to the column names. It doesn't have cell addresses because we are using an Excel table. And conveniently enough, since this is a new column in the table, that formula has been copied down to every single row. What have we got here for the number of rows? We have 385 rows, starting with row 4. So that's 382 rows of information. That's the column that we're going to add up when we make the pivot table. So let's do that. Let's insert a pivot table, and we're going to use the table query from Fabricam, and we're going to put it in a new worksheet. So fine, let's go ahead. I'm going to make this a little bit larger now so that we can have a little more latitude. It doesn't have to be that big. Okay, here's a list of all the fields that were returned from the query, and the pivot table only needs a few. What I'm going to do is tell it that I want the customer number to represent the rows in my pivot table. So it's going to do It's going to sum up all the values for each of the customers on the rows of the pivot table. We've got a grand total as well here at the bottom. So starting with good old Aaron Fitz and going down through whatever this one is. Okay, those are our row labels. For the columns, I'm going to put the aging, where is it? It is the aging bucket. That is going to be my my column labels. Now look at this. We've got aging bucket 1 and 7. This is a reflection of how the data has been entered into the sample company, and this may not be that useful for us, but that is what we've got. And I'll show you, we'll play with it a little bit so that we see some more columns, some normal aging. And then finally, I need to tell it which is the column that I want to total up for my values. That's the sum of the total aging amount column. So for column 1, which is the current column, we have these values. And then column 7, I think, is over 120 days, I think. And I'm going to rename this tab and call it pivot. Okay, let's go back to the parameters table here. We've got it aging based on January 1st, 2016. Let's do this, put a note up here. Historical aged trial balance as of, and then this field here, make a formula to point to the aging date on the parameters tab. Okay, so we have the same date on all 3 tabs. In our parameters, I'm going to change this to 312016 and see what that gives us. Come back to the pivot table and say, go to the data tab and refresh all, and I might have to do it twice, as I remember. Yeah. Oh, look at that. It puts them out of order. Okay, let's put this smallest to largest. Let's have this make sense. There is some value here in aging column number 2, but everything else is still in this horribly old state. Well, now it's worse because I made this value 3.1. It used to be 1.1, so clearly I'm going the wrong way. Let's go back to the parameters tab and let's say put this 11.12015. Whoops, get in the right spot. 11.12015. Okay, come back here to the pivot table and say that I want to refresh it. All right, and I'm not sure that anything has happened yet there. Okay, we're still not back far enough. Let's go back 6 months. So let's go to 5/1/2015. Let's type the date properly. Don't want to confuse Excel. And let's refresh. Okay. Still not back far enough because we still got a aging in that. Let's go back another year. 5/1/2014. Okay. Back to the pivot table. Let's refresh it. There we go. Now we're getting into aging buckets 4, 5, and 6. Let's go back still further. Let's go back 2 more months. 3/1/2014. Again, we're using the sample data, so we have to kind of figure out what's what, where the sample data is coming from. I hit it a second time. I don't know why I have to hit it twice. Sorry about that. But now we've got aging that makes more sense. If we go back still further to, let's say, 1/1/2014, 2014, and refresh this data, we still got some very old stuff here in the seventh aging column. I'll go back 2 more months, 11/1/2013. Come to our pivot table, refresh. Let's see, try again. Oh, look at that, we went back too far. 11/1 must have been the start of the data in the sample company, or 1/1 was maybe. Let's see what we get for this. Again, this is a process of experimentation, and nothing there. I guess I can only go back to 1/1/2014. That is very possible. I don't know this is one way of finding out what kind of data you've got. So January 1st, 2014 is the starting date for the company, the sample company. They put in all of their open invoices, and they happen to be aged all over the place. But there we have it. And that is as far as I'm going to go in this presentation. I think this has shown you all the details about setting up a refreshable Excel workbook, a Refex, using a stored procedure, and how you can use a parameter block and point the stored procedure parameters to the cells on the Excel workbook to feed the stored procedure, and then dynamically alter it to give you pretty much everything you need. If there are any questions, I've got a slide here with information on it, my email address, where you can find the blogs that I've made on GPUG, my Twitter handle, and my direct phone number. So I hope this has been useful. Sorry about the number of segments, but this is not an easy thing. You can see a lot of steps, a lot of detail. Thank you very much.